Welcome to the Raising Confident Girls podcast, your guide to raising strong, confident daughters. I'm Melissa Jones, the founder of Girls Positivity Club and a teacher for over 20 years. In a world where girls often feel overwhelmed, anxious, and confused, this podcast is your go-to space. As caregivers, we navigate challenges together. I founded Girls Positivity Club to provide a place where you belong and get the tools to face today's hurdles. Consider this your regular check-in with a trusted friend, offering insights and practical tips for meaningful conversations. I'm here to help you feel confident on this journey of raising a generation of empowered girls. Let's dive in and raise those confident girls together. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another empowering episode of Raising Confident Girls. And I'm so excited to have our second guest here on the podcast talking about an amazing topic that we all need to hear and I think need a space to talk about. Alicia Crespin is here with us, and she has a background of being a mom of a teenage girl. She is a wife. She is a corporate leader. She leads teams. She mentors people, especially women. She's written an incredible book called The Talk, which is the talk that we all think about when someone says the talk. We all know what that means. And we're going to get into all the things of not being afraid to talk about difficult topics with our daughters or things that might make us uncomfortable. And she's a super empowering woman. So welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm so happy and honored to be here. I love all the work that you're doing, so I'm very inspired. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. You're like a perfect match for us, in our podcast community and what we do in Girls Positivity Club. And it's all about empowering girls. And so, when I think about what you do, and I love your Instagram page because you talk about things that, can make some people uncomfortable. And I do want to say right off the bat that, we are going to be talking about a lot of topics that some people might be uncomfortable with. But I think it's so important that we do that because we need to hold space for all the parents and caregivers of girls, and that, we're not telling you what your values should be, or we're not saying you should live life a certain way or anything like that. But I think we do need to have the conversation of not being afraid of talking about sex or talking about, topics that are not necessarily intercourse, but other things that, come up for girls. And I think that if this is uncomfortable for anyone listening, you can just skip this episode, or hopefully you'll have an open mind and hear what we have to say, because this is a topic that we can't avoid with our girls, especially because if we're saying that we want to raise confident girls and that confident girls will change the world, then we also have to talk honestly with them about tough topics. So we're going to talk about all the things. What brought you to this point of wanting to make this impact on girls' lives, on your daughter's life, in other women's and parents' lives, of talking with their girls about these topics?
I see my connection's going a little unstable, so I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Gotta love tech. Yes. So I would say, right, it's always that way.
Yes.
I would say, I have a 15-year-old daughter, and I never got the talk growing up. And looking back, when I was trying to talk to my daughter about it, I just couldn't find the words to say it.
Yes.
Even though I knew she already knew stuff, right? Because you see shows, she makes little comments. She got social media around 8th grade, and I knew she knew it. And I could talk to her about everything. I could talk to her when you're on your period. Like, I would be like, this is what like blood potentially feels like, right? Or seems like all those things, but sex specifically, it was just not coming out. I couldn't find the words. Mm-hmm. So I started asking my mom friends, and some of them were the same boat, or some of them lied a little bit. Like, I would say like, oh, you came out of my belly, or, you don't do that until you're in love, and just things like that you hear. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And the more I kept diving into it and talking to other moms, I'm like, wow, this is actually a gap. Like, even though there's amazing resources from therapists, doctors, fantastic stuff, but like for some reason it wasn't resonating with a lot of the moms I was talking to. So that's where I was like, this could be something that is different. It's unique and it's just real. And it's
Mhm.
not like awkward scripts or weird lectures, because I think that's kind of where like the rubber meets the road a little bit. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yes.
So that's what kind of inspired me to do something different and really just ask moms and just be like, hey, what is your experience? Like, did you get it when you were young? Because generally that influences if you're going to do it if you have a daughter or
Mhm.
not, or a different
Mhm.
way.
Yeah.
Um, and then, like, as I started going more into it, I was like, wait, now I want to interview like 18 and 19-year-olds to see, like, what are they experiencing right now? Because that's what we need to be talking about, not just when we were younger. So it kind of
Yes.
has evolved over time. But it was really just me getting comfortable to be able to talk to my daughter. Like, that was the main inspiration from this.
Mhm.
And then it just, so many more women were interested. So I was like, oh, this is a platform and we need to talk about this. Like, we have to start talking about this.
Yes. And so how did you do it? You interviewed 40 women, and
I
what
did.
was your process like? Like, did you ask them how they found out about, like, was it a lot of like birds and the bees talk, or what did they
Yeah.
say as far as like what were they told?
Yeah, so I decided I wanted women of all ages. So
Mhm.
my youngest one is 18 and then my oldest one was about 65-ish.
Mhm.
So I wanted women from all ages, different ethnicities, cultural upbringings. I had a few women who were lesbian as well because I
Mhm.
wanted to understand, like, how are they even taught, or what, like, how was their approach,
Mhm.
or not, right? And so I kind of formulated a list of questions, and I brought my daughter along with me on this journey because number one, I wanted her to know, like, hey, this is something I'm interested in, but this is going to be the broader benefit and I want you to be okay with it, which she was, which I was so grateful and appreciative.
Yeah.
So I would ask her questions and like bounce questions, like ideas off of her, and then my mom friends. And so I had like a list of questions, right? Um, Obviously background stuff, but most of it was like, okay, did you get the talk when you were young, right?
Mhm.
And then a lot of them would kind of go from there, like, okay, you did or you did not, or you know what, I only got the menstrual period talk, but then beyond that it was like, well, now that you can have babies you can't have sex anymore,
Yeah.
or sorry, you're going to get pregnant now, right?
Yes, yes.
And very much of a don't have sex, and that's the extent of the talk.
Mhm.
um, there were a couple, very few, where the moms actually did talk to them, or they gave them a book, right? Like, the American Girl book was a popular one back then,
Mhm.
or Where Did I Come From? Those books.
Yes.
But they still didn't actually like talk to their daughters. It was more of like, here, take this resource and you kind of figure it out and formulate your own point of view. Um, so we talked about that. And then I really wanted to know like the feelings, right? Because even thinking back to your own experience, I think 3 in 4 women that I interview regretted their first time. And I think about that from a man's perspective. Did a male ever regret his first time? Probably not, and
Yes.
not in the same way, because our
Right.
emotions are so different, right?
Uh-huh.
And that just kept getting me thinking, like, there's so much connected here, right? Of like,
Mhm.
advocating for us and doing what we as women really want, and not because we're being pressured by someone else or
Mhm.
want to fit in and feel cool, all the stuff that you're talking about building
Yeah.
confidence.
Mhm.
But it all kind of goes back, if we're not comfortable talking about it with our own mom or in our family, and it's like hushed and shamed and pushed to the side, like, how do you expect something different to come about? You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely.
So yeah, just all this stuff started
Oh my
coming.
gosh. Yes.
And that kind of stemmed where most of the conversation started.
It's so important. I mean, I think about my own talk that I was given, and same thing. I was super close with my mom and, still am, and could talk to her about anything. And she did the book approach.
Hmm.
And she even, because I was uncomfortable talking with her, like reading the book with her, she did the approach where she put it in a certain place and told me that if I ever wanted to read it and come and talk to her, that
Hmm.
I could. And I did end up getting the book because there was a day that I was like, I just want to like find this out. I don't
Right.
know exactly what it is. And then, but I never, that I can remember, followed up with her to
Yeah.
ask her any questions. And then, like you were saying, ended up in some situations where I didn't really know what I was doing. And I mean, I did. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like with a
Yes, yes.
boy in a
Mhm.
car, and it was like not going all the way to intercourse,
Right.
but he was doing things to me that I
Mhm.
mean, it was consensual, but it was like I didn't really know what was happening, or like I
Exactly.
didn't know that boys did those things, or,
Mhm.
and I think because my internal chaos was so low, or like I was just so confused about so many things about my own self-esteem and
Right.
confidence that I didn't have the voice to say, I don't like how that feels, or
Exactly.
it
Yes.
hurts a little bit, or
Mhm.
that's, I don't feel comfortable with this. And it's not that I ever, yeah, like I knew if it got to a certain point, maybe to say
Right.
something, but at the same time, when you're at that age, you want the boy to like you. And
Yes,
you're
exactly.
thinking, as messed up as that sounds, like that is
It's the
true,
truth.
that
It's the
girls
truth.
in middle school, and it's starting even younger now, it's like
It is.
middle school, high school, sometimes elementary school, there's
It is.
experimentation happening that we don't necessarily want. And sometimes it happens in unexpected places, or, and this isn't, again, to make anybody scared or afraid. This is to empower people. And so,
Right.
what are things that you think are important to talk with our daughters about like the things that are not
Talking
sexual,
about.
as far as like
Mhm.
they are, but they're not. Like it's not like, I feel like when people have the talk, they are thinking only intercourse.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so then it's like you're telling the story of how babies are made, basically,
Mhm.
and
Yes, which
trying to do it in a way, like I think about my teenager, and I was not prepared mentally to have this
mhm.
talk in fourth grade. And it was like, I want to know, like, I want the real information. And I was like, what am I going to say? Like, I didn't expect at 10
Yes.
years old to be having this conversation. So I tried to do the animal way, like, and talk about animals. And it was like, no, what about people though? And then it was
Right.
like, well, how old were you when it was your first time doing things? And it was like, I did not expect
Yeah, I
all
went to
this
a whole
kind of
different level.
questions. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I didn't do it perfectly, but I will say that my teenager and I do have a very open, I mean, I know there are certain things that are still filtered, but we have talked about things that I'm like, "Woo, okay, you feel safe with me to talk about this." So
Right. Amazing.
I'm glad that we do. But yeah, so what are some things that come up that are not intercourse related, or what do you suggest with, like, do you start with the talk and then do you go into other
Yeah.
things, or do you ask them what they already know, or what is your advice for all the parents out there?
Yeah, I think, the more I'm interviewing people, it is as young as like 7 and 8-year-olds
Mhm.
now, just because of social media. Older siblings is a big one. And again,
Yes.
that's not your fault. It just
Yeah.
happens to be around if they're around older siblings, or if they
Yeah.
go to a friend's house and the friend has older siblings.
Yeah.
So no matter what, right, your kid is going to be exposed.
Mhm.
So to me, it was more of always starting at, like, what I'm hearing is like just starting so young, and more of like, hey, you're gonna hear things that you're questioning, like, what is that? Like, I don't know that. And we never said that in our house, or that's
Mhm.
new. And then just being like, you can come to me and talk to me about it. And I promise you, I will tell you what it is. I might not tell
Mhm.
you all of the details, because as you get older, you learn things, but I'm at
Yeah.
least going to have a conversation with you.
Mhm.
So even just setting that stage, that like, you're going to see uncomfortable things, or, you're going to want to, you're curious about this, like, just come tell me and ask me. And I'm more than happy to talk about it. Like, you're not in trouble. I think that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing, right? Like, you're not in
Yes.
trouble. Um, but I'm here to talk about it. So it starts with little things like that.
Mhm.
Then it's like when you're watching a show or a movie and there's kissing, and there's like, even Disney princess movies, they all kiss in there, right? Or they all have
Mhm.
relationships. Like, it's like, how do you take those little moments like that and just start to like poke at them and say like, hey, what did you think about that? Or like,
Mhm.
or if a unhealthy relationship kind of surfaces in a movie, be like, what did you think about that?
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that? And don't, right, give them a lecture, just kind of hear where their brain is at and where
Yeah.
they're feeling. So it's starting those little conversations and kind of just poking them, and hearing where their head is at. because you obviously
Yes.
don't want to share too much and then they're
Yeah.
overwhelmed and they can't really take it in. So you definitely want to know like where is their brain at and where they're at, and then you keep progressing the conversations. But some of the big ones early on are like unhealthy conversations, like unhealthy relationships that you see. Yeah, starting with like I said, unhealthy relationships. Those are little things that you can talk about. The other big one that starts very early on is self pleasure and masturbation. I
Mhm.
think that is one that is not talked about at all, specifically for girls.
Yes.
For boys, it's talked about so early on. It's joked about. It's very well known, but for girls, we just do not talk about it, and it's still taboo.
Mhm.
So that one is a big one where, you know, it's important to tell your daughter, like, hey, you may have like accidentally rubbed against that climbing a monkey bar or whatever it is, and it might have felt some type of way. I just want you to know that that's a normal feeling and it's okay. Like, and even though I know that makes a lot of moms feel so uncomfortable, but it is true. And you don't want them to
Yeah.
think like, oh my God, what is that feeling? Like to be scared of it. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
So just a simple conversation like that of like, I just want you to know that you may have felt this and that's okay. Like it's normal for girls to also feel that and to like explore it a little bit.
Mhm.
And again, I know that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but it is the truth because they're going to do it
Yeah.
anyway. Just
Mhm.
like how boys do. It's just we don't talk about it ever as moms and as women, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had parents reach out and say that, I had one parent who talked about that, like that she walked in on her daughter doing that and she was like, I didn't know how to react. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to make her feel bad about it. And then you know, she's like, I just didn't know what to do. And it's
Hmm.
like, that is such a normal thing. And like, just getting to know your own body and even, looking at our bodies. I think women have
Yes.
so many hangups with even looking at our bodies, like in the,
Hmm.
just natural. And,
Yes.
when you come out of the
Agreed.
shower or whatever, and not being afraid of that. And I think not being afraid to tell our girls that they don't have to hide it or be ashamed of it. Not that,
Hmm.
I'm sure it's not like it's something that you're just out in the open, doing,
Of
but
course.
that it's not like a shameful thing to do. And I think a lot of times too, when girls are curious about those things, or they are curious about just experimenting with different, things, that in general, they can feel scared to talk to their parents about it because they think they will
Exactly.
get into trouble. Or let's say that they have a device and they are
Hmm.
curious one day and they type something in the search, and then all of
Exactly.
a sudden, an adult website comes up and they're like, whoa. But then
Yeah.
their curiosity gets to them and they're like, I kind of have been wanting to know this. So what do you say to parents in those situations when their daughter, they either walk in on something? And I mean, this could be for boys too. Like we could easily walk in on something, but you're right. Like it's not talked about as much with girls, and it's not normalized as much with girls because girls are taught, basic boundaries of like protect your body and say no and things like that, or wait until marriage. And not that, I mean, boys can be told that too. And, every family has their own values and beliefs about it. And I think even if you do have very traditional values, there are still conversations to be had. So how, besides like you wait till marriage and that's the end of it, like then they wait till marriage and then what? They don't know what to do,
Exactly.
or they're like, what is it supposed to be?" And it's like becomes this big thing of like, I'm scared of my wedding night because I don't know what it'll be. And then
Exactly.
yeah, so sorry.
Yes.
I'm like asking you a million things, but
No, but it's
what
all
do you
true. It's all true.
yeah, what do you say to that as far as like how do you talk to them about other things?
Yeah, I would say, like for instance, the masturbation conversation. I didn't talk to my daughter about it. I interviewed a
Mhm.
woman in the book, and she brought it up, and I was like, "Oh, dang! I totally didn't say that. Like, what is?" I'm
Yeah.
like, so I kind of felt bad, so I had to go
Yeah.
back, right? And again, my daughter's older, but
Mhm.
would be something that I would have loved to tell her earlier. So the way
Yeah.
I said it to her, right, was like, "Hey, honey, um, I should have talked to you about this much earlier. And I'm actually sorry that I did not talk to you about this because you may have these feelings and you may have felt away and you couldn't say anything because I never did. And I was
Mhm.
like, but I want to talk to you about masturbation. And of course she freaked out. She was like, no, no, no. Like, of course, because they all would, right? You know
Yeah.
this.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I know it's awkward. But you know about this, right? And she's like, yeah, boys talk about it all the time. Like literally her first statement. I'm like, yes,
Mhm.
and I'm like, I just want you to know that girls do it all the time too. It's
Mhm.
very normal to like explore yourself. Like it's normal if it feels good. It's normal if maybe it doesn't because maybe you did something like that didn't make you feel comfortable.
Mhm.
I was like, but I just want you to know that it's okay. Like it is 100% normal. And I told her, I was like, and I do it too. I did it when I was young, and I was like,
Mhm.
and I just want you to know, like, you're not alone if you did. I'm like, you don't need to tell me anything, but I just
Yeah.
want you to know that, like, it is okay and it is normal. And she was like, okay, mom, I got it. And like, that was literally it. It was literally like a 5-minute conversation. But even just for me to say it, number one, it took a lot of
Yes.
courage for me to even say that. But then once I did, I was like, I just felt so much better knowing that she knew that it was okay. And I'm like, gosh, if I would have seeded that in her brain when she's 8, 9, 10, right? And
Yeah.
it probably would have helped so much because it is so
Mhm.
like silenced and just like pushed to the side. Like that doesn't happen when it
Mhm.
does. Like it in fact does.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a difference, like, in the younger ages, it seems like it's more about, like, good touch, bad touch, teaching
Mm-hmm.
them the appropriate names for body
Names
parts,
for
which
sure.
is
Yes.
yeah, like, obviously and they get that education in school too, but a lot of these girls, like, they don't get anything beyond that, and it really is I think there is such a fear of, like, telling them something too soon.
Yes, like, oh, you
Um
think that now they're gonna go out and do it, which that's a little
Yeah,
false, but it's our
right.
own perception and our own we're just scared. Like we are scared,
Yeah.
right? We're standing in our own way. We are
Mhm.
scared, which is understandable because we did not talk about that and it's not talked about in society for women specifically.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, yeah, same thing with like body image and all of those
Mhm.
types of conversations of like, especially because social media is
Yes.
not going away and
Mhm.
they are going to come across things. And that was a thing that a different mom shared with me about like, my daughter is seeing things online and, getting her information from her friends.
Yeah.
And I always think like we want to be their main
The
resource. We're
first.
not going to
Yes,
be
the
the
first.
only one, but
Mhm.
do we want them to learn from their friends who don't know what they're doing?
Yes.
Or,
And
I
they make
mean,
up
or
lies, right?
yeah,
They make up lies to be cool also.
yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah. Or like they have older siblings and they're,
Correct.
whatever, passing down misinformation or whatever. And it's like, I think it is taking a temperature of where they're at with certain topics and
Yes.
obviously age appropriate. Like you said, I'm sure your daughter, if you don't mind my asking, how old was she when you had the masturbation conversation?
Yeah, so it was like a year and a half ago, sadly,
Mhm.
like when she was
Yeah,
14, so I waited.
and
So
that's
yes.
okay.
Mhm.
That's okay. I mean,
Yeah,
better late than never, right? I mean,
exactly. Yes,
I
yes,
never
that's what I
had
always
that
say.
talk. Yeah,
Yes.
I never
Mhm.
had that talk. Yeah, I think it's yeah, in that teenage, like tween teenage. I mean, we all
Yes.
know that if you've had a child at that age, like they don't want to talk about those things
Yes,
with us.
correct. They don't.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but I love what you said about saying like, I just need to say this
Mhm.
and just let you know that this is normal. This is what it is. It's perfectly normal for boys and girls. And if you ever want to talk to me about it, the door's open or whatever. And another thing that I think can be powerful too is written conversation.
Mhm.
So, not that it has to be like a only if something big comes up, but I'm a big fan of even like passing a notebook. Like I even did this with
Yes.
my
Mhm.
son.
Mhm.
Yeah, where we just did it as a habit, not like, if something's ever wrong, write to me in this book. Like because then it becomes this big thing
Right.
of like, oh, I've got to write something big in this book. But we were literally writing back and forth. And I know if a boy will do it, like a girl will definitely do it. So
Oh,
I was like, I'm
100%.
going to do it with my son. Yeah. And just
I
see,
love
like,
that.
would he do it? Yeah. And it was just random things like about our day. And I would ask him questions. He would ask me questions. And they were just day to day things. But there was the container, whether it's verbal or written or however it
Yes.
is, that at least you're holding the space for them, that if they want to say something, they can. And I think when there is just one big talk, it can
Mhm.
feel like this mountain of something
Yes,
that
agreed.
parents have to tackle, and they don't know when to have it, or what to say. Or so there any tips that you would give, like, as far as parents knowing that everybody has their own beliefs and things, like, what would be some tips that you would give them on, like, having their first talk? Like, let's say that they have a teenager and they're like, I really haven't talked about a lot of things with my teenager. Like, or if they have a 7-year-old, like, what do I start saying? Like, I know you mentioned healthy relationships, but is there, like, are there some topics that you would recommend that people start with, or what do they say? What would you say would be
Yeah,
helpful?
definitely. Again, like age appropriateness is obviously critical
Yeah.
here just because of so I always honestly start with asking a question of again, use a friend, use a TV show, use a song lyric. I use song lyrics all the time because those are so bad
Really?
right now. And but
Yeah.
all
Oh, yeah.
these girls are doing TikTok dances to like the worst possible words you can ever
Oh
hear.
my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, as we know.
Yes.
So, right, there's always something in your environment that you can start with. So then
Yeah.
it's not about them, right? It's like, oh, I heard
Yeah.
this, or use my book, right? Like I use that a lot too. Like, oh, I read
Yeah.
this. I just came across this article or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Mhm.
Um, like if you're watching a show like right Outer Banks or something, which all these kids are
Yeah.
watching, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you know that they're too young probably to get it fully, but they're seeing it, right? You can be like, what is your thoughts on that? Like, what did you think about that? And I would even use the word, right? Again, depending on their age, like it looks like they were probably going to have sex. What is your thoughts on that? And that's how
Mhm.
I would just honestly frame it, like very vague, using the word sex though, or
Yeah.
whatever it may be, but just
Yeah.
frame it and just kind of see where their head is at.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're gonna look at you like, what did you just say? Right. And freak out. But
Mhm.
then other words, they'd be like, yeah, I probably think so. When they say that, then you know that they already know a lot more than you think or you want to
Mhm.
admit, probably. I think it's more
Mhm.
that than we want to admit. And then that's where you would start a little bit more. And again, I try to like take it out of them. I try to use
Yeah.
other situations like, oh, well, do you have a friend in school? Like, does any of your friends have boyfriends or they have crushes? Things like that, where you're kind of talking
Mhm.
about someone else. Um,
Mhm.
so then they don't feel so like cornered or that, you're giving them a lecture or anything like that. So
Mhm.
those are like honestly, the two biggest ones I would say. I do love when we're driving in a car, when I actually had like a more detailed talk with my daughter, took the dog on a walk,
Yes.
like where you're
Yes.
not facing each other because that's just
Yes.
a little awkward for both.
Yes.
So when you can find those neutral spaces, I think that helps quite a bit. Like I said, my daughter was 14 when I talked to her officially about it. And we were on a walk with my dog, and I was like, "Okay, we have to talk about sex today." And she stopped walking. Like, oh
It's
Lord.
like right here in the neighborhood? Yeah.
I'm like, come on, kid, come on.
Mhm.
Um, and I started in those same type of questions of like,
Yeah.
like, do you know about sex because of sexual education just in class, general, like
Yeah.
uterus, vagina, penis, etc. She's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, do you know about other things than intercourse? Because that is always, like you mentioned, what's missed. We only
Yes.
focus on intercourse, but there are so
Mhm.
many other progressive steps and we never talk about those with our kids,
Mhm.
but they're doing them right, like you mentioned, so
Mhm.
much earlier. So that's
Mhm.
what I wanted to understand with her. Like I was like, there's touching, there's oral sex, and I'm saying these words, but believe me, I am so nervous. Right? I'm
Yes.
like
Dying inside. Yeah.
dying inside but trying to play cool, but I just know the importance of it.
Yeah.
And I even had to tell her, I'm like, look, I'm sorry if I giggle sometimes. I'm like, it's not that this is funny. I'm like, but this does make me feel a little uncomfortable. But like,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that uncomfortableness because I know that this is important and it's a growth
Mhm.
step for me and for you as well. So I was totally owning my like uncomfortabilityness. So it didn't make
Mhm.
her that uncomfortable either.
Mhm.
But I had to actually say, like, okay, like for instance, with oral sex, I said, look, that seems like an easy step now because again, these 18-year-olds that I'm interviewing, it seems like that is like such a quick step compared to when I was younger. And I was like,
Yeah.
I just want you to think about like the level of exposure that you have. And I had to
Mhm.
like, I wanted her to like visually get this thought in her head, because I don't think I was ever explained in this way. And a lot of the women of like, you are actually laying down, your legs are open, and you have someone down there. And I was like, and it's
Mhm.
very like uncomfortable feeling, no matter if you
Mhm.
love the boy, doesn't matter. Like you, and I'm like, you have to be comfortable enough in your own self to be okay
Mhm.
with that. And I was like, and usually at
Mhm.
16, 17, you are not, and you're doing it
Mhm.
because, he decides he wants to do that, or you heard your friend
Mhm.
do it, or whatever it is. And I was like, what I want you to think about is just to like stop and like think for that 1 second of like, is this really what I want? Is this really for me? Like, am I actually okay with this? Or am I doing
Mhm.
it because of these other things? So those were like the type of like
Yeah.
dialogue I would have with her back and forth,
Mhm.
of like, it's more than just the physical act. It's like, you emotionally, how are you feeling, and thinking,
Yeah.
do I actually want this?
Mhm. Yeah, and it's not like I think some people are so afraid to say something like that because
Yes.
it's like I don't want her to think that I'm giving her permission to do whatever she wants. At the same time, if she is in that situation, you want her to know like it's okay for me to check in with myself and think,
Yes.
do I want to do this or is this something I feel pressured to do? Or
Mhm.
I've even told my son, who is a teenager too, if a girl says no and changes her mind like in the middle of, she says yes and then she changes her mind, because he does have a serious girlfriend, and we have had open conversations, but it's like it's it's okay for her to change her mind.
Mhm.
And if something doesn't feel right to say something, it's also okay for you to say that too,
Yeah.
like it goes both ways. And I want you to think about that with her. It is very different with girls because
Mhm.
there is such an emotional piece, and not that there isn't with boys, but it is such a different type of connection with girls,
Yes.
especially. And I think it's so powerful what you're saying of like, they have to know to check in with themselves, even in that moment, because I remember a moment where I mentally thought to myself, "I don't like this."
But you
And
still just,
and
right.
did it, and
Yeah.
did it. And it's like, it doesn't mean that we're saying that the girls, should continue, but they do have the right to say like, stop, or I don't like this or
Yeah.
whatever. So, what
And
are
be vocal
some
about it,
common
right? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, what are the
And
common things that you say about that with boundaries?
yeah, I say, boundaries even start way early on. Like if
Of
you're
course.
if you have a sibling and they're annoying you, and
Yeah.
you can't even say like, "Hey, this is bothering me because," not in the way
Mhm.
that most siblings, right, where they're like, "Just
Yeah.
stop it, go away, you're so annoying,"
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
like, what
Uh-huh.
are you actually feeling? And then
Yeah.
actually telling your sibling that, right? So it could be as early as
Mhm.
that. One of these moms I interviewed, she brought up that example, which I loved. And she was saying how one of her daughters is very easygoing, and she doesn't want to cause fights or
Yeah.
confrontations. But she told her daughter, she was like, look, while you think that may be good because you just want to keep it even kill, that's going to eventually hurt you potentially in situations
Mhm.
like this. So she would actually push her daughter to say, like, hey, tell her that that bothers you. Like, actually tell her why it bothers you in a nice
Yeah.
way, of course. But that's kind of
Yeah.
setting boundaries from an early, early age.
Yes.
Um, so even having a conversation, just again, nothing about sexualness or anything.
Right.
It's literally just your everyday life where you can actually start,
Agreed.
because you got
And
to build
like
the
I think
confidence, like to say it somewhere, right?
yes, and I think you're exactly right. Like if you're a parent listening right now and you're thinking like, "Oh my gosh, I haven't done this," or "Oh, I've done a good job of doing this." Like my daughter does say that I feel statements, like we talk about that a lot, like I feel
Mhm.
blank because blank. Like that's the easiest way
Mhm.
to start.
Yes.
And you're right. Like all of this, the talk put aside, it's like no, we're planting the seeds while they're growing up and saying things to them like,
Yes.
you can say, I feel this certain way. And even with friendships, like one thing that I really
Yes.
see that's prominent in middle school girls is they are afraid to tell their friends that they are upset about something or that
Yes.
they
Mhm.
have a difference in opinion when it's something like if it's something like a flavor of ice cream, of course they're going to say like whatever flavor they like. But if it's something that they think might make their friend mad,
Mhm.
they are so afraid of that friend abandoning them
Yes.
or all of a sudden being mad at them and not liking them anymore. And, that's why it's so important what we're doing is planting these seeds while they're growing up is like, that's actually not a friend. If you're not able to say how you truly feel,
Exactly.
and I think we can't say that enough. And like you were
Mhm.
saying, like making that boundary of like, I felt left out when you were all talking about the sleepover and I was at my dad's and I wasn't able to go. So I am glad you all had a good time, but I also feel a certain type of way about it. They're so afraid to say
Yes.
that even younger sometimes, or
I
like
know.
at the really young ages, like the kindergarten, first grade age, it's like there'll be a friend who's like, well, if you're friends with her, you're not friends with me. Like, you're my
Mhm.
best friend. We're going to go off and play.
Yes.
And
Yes.
even then, yeah, I mean, even then, like saying something like that of like, I really want to play with you. Can we all play together? And there are going to be times they're told no. And even working out that is such a whole
It is.
confidence building of like, it's okay if not everybody likes you, or it's okay if you're not friends with every single person. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's such a
And I
thing that
think
comes up.
I love that because I think that also goes back to like us as parents, we don't want our child to be hurt. So we
Of
often
course.
try to help them and not let them feel uncomfortable. And
Yes.
I get it, right? We all do this. And so
Yeah.
we're like the saviors and so it's we like need to take a step and think about our own self. Like one of the things I
Mhm.
have in my book is just self reflection of like
Yeah.
what did I actually do that actually helped my daughter build confidence, build whatever it may be, work on
Mhm.
boundaries. Like
Yeah.
because we are the leaders of that because it starts in the
Mhm.
home. And
Mhm.
so it's like if you're protecting them and not letting them feel uncomfortable and even things at your house, like how would you expect them to act this way at school? So
Mhm.
it does go hand in hand. Like, and that's why I'm
Mhm.
saying it just start, but you can always still start now. Like you don't, it's
Mhm.
okay if like for me, my daughter's 14, I'm starting now. Like it's okay. Like start
Yeah.
now. There's never too late of a time because
Mhm.
your one conversation that you have with them can impact them, next week or 2 years from now, whatever it
Mhm.
may be. So it's like, it's just, but we need to like really check ourselves as mothers
Mhm.
of like, am I actually doing the best that I can at this moment? Or is there something I can tweak or change to help them fix these things? And not in a
Mhm.
lecture way, but like in an actual real conversation and going
Mhm.
deeper than just like keeping it up here.
Yeah, and I love what you said about being curious. It's all about curiosity and those open-ended questions because sometimes they tell us things that we don't expect. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so funny that you said that in the car or on a walk. Those are things I say all the time on our
Yeah,
podcast. And like
I
the
love it.
more, yeah, like you were saying that, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Every single parent I ever talk to, their best talks are in the car or
Yes.
on a walk. It's always
Mhm.
like exactly like you were saying, that side by side interaction, because or even if they're in the back seat, if they're younger,
Mhm.
because there is this separation that feels a little bit safer than,
Yes.
I remember like my dad sitting me down and being like, we need to talk. And I was always like,
Like, oh gosh, what
I'm going to
happened?
be like, what is this? Like, what is
Yeah.
this? And I think it's the discomfort that they may be feeling at the time, and whether it be about any topic, but it's like, if you're like, we need to talk, if you've ever had like a text or
Yeah.
something that someone says that, you're in a
Oh god,
panic
your like
the
heart just
entire
drops and you're like, what
yeah.
happened? What did I do?
Like, what
Yeah.
is this talk? Like, what is it about?
Yeah.
Or, we
It's
need to
those
talk about
small,
something.
small
Yeah.
continuous moments. Yes, I
Yeah.
completely agree. Um, one other thing that had come up more recently is porn, which is a really big
Hmm.
one.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure, like, because I know that one makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Especially again, no, nothing against values or anything, but it is
Of course.
accessible. It's very accessible, especially if parents do not
Hmm.
have parental controls on their phone.
Hmm.
Just explicit content at the minimum. Like if you like, for instance, there was this funny thing that came about where like the teacher said turn to page 69 and everyone laughs. Like everybody
Yes.
laughed.
Yes. As a
So
teacher, that does happen. Yes.
yes, right? And if
Hmm.
you come home and you tell your kid tells you that and you're like, no, don't talk about that. Like, and you just shut it down
Hmm.
automatically, like they are going to go Google what it is or ask their friends if their friends didn't already
Hmm.
tell them earlier, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the same idea to me is like what's happening with porn right now, because it's literally at their fingertips. Like back then,
Yeah.
right? It was like very hard to get to access, and now everybody can see it so young. But
Yeah.
the thing that I'm hearing so much from these 18 and 19-year-olds is like that is now a boy's expectation of sex, which is so
Mhm.
sad for women. It's like another thing that,
Yes.
right, we're like expected to act like that. And that's because if you don't have the conversation with your kid, like, right, if I'm not
Mhm.
telling my daughter, like, hey, I know you have seen porn or heard of, or maybe they haven't, but like even
Yeah.
just telling them, like, look, these are actors, these are paid
Yes.
women. It does
Yes.
not happen like this most of the time. Like,
Mhm.
even saying things like, automatically when you have sex, you don't moan right away. You're not excited like
Right.
that. Like, there, it does not work that way for the most part.
Right. Yeah.
Letting them understand that. And even,
Yes.
you having a son, like having that
Mhm.
conversation with your son of like,
Yeah.
this is not how it is, right? Like,
Right.
women don't just get excited right away. And so a couple women had shared with me that like the first time that they were with a boy, like they were actually upset. The boys were upset because like the girl wasn't like how they saw it in porn. And I'm like, how sad is that? Like,
Yeah.
how sad is it that now we're compared to that because parents are not
Mhm.
talking to their children about conversations like that because it makes them
Mhm.
uncomfortable. So,
Yeah.
like, that's another thing that I think is a really big opportunity, especially when they're like, 13, 14 going into high school.
Yes. And I think too, like I know that when I mean I've had parent controls on things and things still slip through.
Yes,
And
always.
so I mean, you're like, I thought I had the parental controls set. And I remember
Hmm.
being like, talking about it and being like, this is someone's fantasy. This is like a movie. This is not, reality. Um these women are not usually what regular women look like, or these are
Hmm.
adult grown people.
Yes.
um it's just such a thing that, and I think sometimes, like, I've heard from kids before who have said, well, if I tell my parents, I'm afraid they won't love me anymore if they know. I
Hmm.
really heard that from a kid, and it made my heart sink, because
Yes,
it's
I
like
know.
that's what they think will kind of get them disowned, or they'll stop loving me.
Right.
And we all know that's not the truth. But
Correct.
sometimes they can, in their minds, make it so big of like, if I talk about this one thing, or if I say I've done this one thing, whatever it would be, um, that they are going to be unlovable, or unworthy of
Yeah,
whatever. And you're right, especially with girls, like, and there are girls that are curious and might look something up. And it's like,
for sure.
of course, we don't want our kids to see that. And of course, we don't want necessarily, them to stumble onto something that is going to replace what we're trying to build in them. But it does
Yes,
happen.
of course.
And even with the strongest parental controls on, and like, we can follow them around and watch them like a hawk, but at some point, you're going to
They're
hear
at school,
something.
whatever it may be. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And even in private
exactly.
schools that are kids aligned with your same values and all of that, it's like
Yes.
private school, public school, like at some point, someone's going to laugh about something. And then there's a kid that's like, what does that mean? And then
Yeah.
there'll be a kid that's like, I'll tell you later. And then at lunch, they're finding out about whatever the thing is. And then they're
Yes.
like traumatized by it, but then afraid to bring it up. So, yeah. So I love that you're just like having the conversation, or
Yes.
like, they're like, you're grounded, and say that the kid's grounded right away, of like,
Right.
you're in trouble, go to your room, you shouldn't be looking at those
Yes.
things. And I get that, like, we all say and do things that we wish we could do over as parents. But what do you say in that case, as far as
Of
like
course. Yes.
a parent that like reacts in the wrong way? Like, we all make mistakes. Like, what do you think about like remediation, or like you were saying, you missed the conversation with your daughter about masturbation, like you never even talked about it until you did the interview with the woman. You're like, oh my gosh, I never even thought about that. How do you
Hmm.
repair, either like me having the animal talk, I'm like, that was a horrible way to start, but I was panicking and like shuffling in my mind, like, what am I going to say? But like, how do you repair that? I mean, I went back and repaired it, but like, what do you suggest with like repair, or like, if
Yeah.
they felt like they shamed their child for asking something, or, and then later they're like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have done that, like, I think I want to try it again. What would you
Hmm.
say about that?
Yeah. I think like again, when you check yourself and
Mhm.
remove your uncomfortableness, like your own shame for bringing it up or whatever those feelings that make you feel that way, and
Mhm.
you realize like, oh, I made a mistake doing that. Like
Mhm.
having that honesty in itself to your kid just shows that you yourself are not perfect and you're
Yeah.
okay owning up to not approaching it in the right way or freaking out because it was something brand new and you weren't prepared.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing I would say there is like own your mistake. Like own that, you know what, I freaked out. I wasn't ready for this. I should have been.
Mhm.
Um, and I just want you to know, like, I'm sorry if I made you feel shamed or scared or sad. I just had a moment and I'm working on that moment to not react like that. But I want you to know, like, how much I appreciate you coming to me and telling me this, like, to
Mhm.
trust me and feel safe to tell me. And so, like, owning up to that mistake and that you're going to do better and that, you
Mhm.
know, it may happen again though, because you're learning this, all these stages with
Yeah.
them. But just owning up to them and being honest about it. Because I think we try to be perfect parents sometimes so much, and then
Mhm.
that causes our child to have, right, these perfect expectations. And then that's when they get scared to say the bad stuff. So
Yeah.
you're like, you being this perfect mom or perfect dad is like literally keeping the cycle going, you know?
Mhm.
So it's
I
just
know.
being owning up to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I think having that uncomfortable conversation just shows them that you can be vulnerable, and
Yes,
then they're more likely to be vulnerable with you
exactly.
because as much as we think that we're being real with our kids, they also hold us on a pedestal, or they like see us as this your mom or dad or
Yes,
whoever. And
right.
it's like you don't really know even how to bring things like this up sometimes. And
Hmm.
sometimes just saying, like, hey, I freaked out and I'm sorry
Yeah,
is a good way to start.
it really is. It really
And
is.
yeah, and
And
giving
it can
them
be in
the
all
language.
things. Yeah, and it can be in
Yeah.
all things. Like, for
Yeah.
instance, right? My husband and I will get into an argument or whatever,
Mhm.
and my daughter knows clearly, but I think a
Yeah.
lot of us try to like shush it and not talk about it
Yes.
because we don't want like our
Yes.
kids to see. But then
Yes.
what kind of relationship are you building, right?
Mhm.
For your child and their perception
Yeah.
of marriage, etc. So like
Yeah.
I talked to my daughter very early on. I was like, "Hey, you may notice there's a little bit of tension or, you know, dad and I are a little quiet right now." And I was like, you know, we did get in an argument. I was like, but it's
Mhm.
normal. Like all married
Mhm.
couples get in an argument. And I just want you to
Yeah.
know that, like, I love your dad to death. Like, I love him. But right now
Yes.
we're not agreeing on this subject. So we just need to take a
Yes.
chill pill. Like, and this
Yes.
is normal and it's okay. And I'm like,
Yes.
if you're uncomfortable, like, I just want you to know, like, that's why. But if you want to talk to me, we can talk. Even things like that. Um,
Yes.
but you know, we just kind of keep it to the side and just be quiet about it, right?
Yeah. Hope they didn't hear. And
Yes.
I think yes, and I think it's so true to say, like, it's normal to argue. Like, it's
Yes.
and it doesn't mean you're getting divorced. Like, I
Right.
think that some kids think if their parents argue, then that means
Hmm.
they're breaking up and they're getting a
Yes.
divorce. And it's like, no, that's actually not true. Like, it's actually healthy to have conflict, and
Yes.
even
Yes.
to show them how to fight in a way
Yes.
is like, I've listened to a lot of experts on that, is like, you know, avoiding or giving someone the silent treatment or something like that is like not the healthy way to handle,
Hmm.
conflict. And it can teach our girls that, they should do the same. Like when we don't mean
Right.
to, of course they watch everything we do. So fortunately
Yes.
and unfortunately.
Yes.
But it's like we want to give them the language, like you were saying, you want to tell them that these things are normal. We did raise our voices, or we do need time apart, and you're going to notice that we're a little bit quieter around each other. We do need space. And yeah, I love that you said that.
Yeah. And it really goes back to just whatever you're feeling, like, how could you just tell your kid and bring them into that feeling as well? So they know
Mhm.
that you're not this like perfect person,
Mhm.
that you're feeling uncomfortable, that you, whatever, you're nervous for something. You know, I was
Yeah.
telling my daughter I have my mom's podcast today, and I was like, you know, I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited,
Aw.
you know,
Yeah.
just so they know, like, that these are real feelings and I feel them too, even being, you know, a grown
Mhm.
woman who's confident, but I still have
Yeah.
these feelings. And I think
Yeah.
just showing that from as early as you can, or even starting right now, right? That is the way that you help them, like, know that these feelings are normal,
Mhm.
uncomfortable ones, whatever it may be. Like, how do you
Mhm.
just get them to think about that a little bit?
Yeah. And what, our podcast is called Raising Confident Girls. What would you say is your way, or how are you trying to raise a confident girl, knowing that you have a teenager? What are your main things that you are trying to do to help raise her to be confident and have a voice and not be afraid to use it, and also embrace her mistakes and do all the things that are human,
Yes, I know, right?
but while also being
If you can
confident?
mint this, yeah, if you can mint this, right? I
Mm.
would say the biggest ones I say is like just bringing her along the journey, and like I said, letting her into to my feelings, that I may be sad and crying one day, but I'm still get it to here. It's just at this moment, I need to let go of these emotions for whatever. I had a bad day at work or whatever it may be. Who
Mhm.
knows what it could be.
Yeah.
But that I'm still like this at my core and my center. Like I still have these values and these beliefs. It's just, you can have these moments, and you're still a confident woman. So I just let her into the where my head is at and what I feel. And I think that helps because, again, she's looks up to me, right? She looks up to
Yeah.
me and her dad. And so if we're showing her that you can be emotional, you can do this, you can be this, but then you can still be this, I think that's
Mhm.
first and foremost. Um, the second is I really try to be involved in her life, in school conversations and what her girlfriends or her are talking about. Like I'll hang out with them, we'll make like TikTok videos because I really want to hear, number one, I just want to
Yeah.
hear what her kids are talking about.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Because that's super important.
Yeah. Of
Um,
course.
yeah. So I try to make time to be centered around what she's talking about. I'm like, oh, what did you
Mhm.
guys talk about in school today? I'm like, hey, did you ever bring up this? Did you ever bring up this? Like probe and poke to try to get a little bit more insight. And then
Uh-huh.
I role play a lot with her. Like we'll do scenarios of like, okay, well, what if this person said this? What would you do here? So I try to
Yeah.
bring like live situations,
Mhm.
and let her go with it, but then try to like, insert some of my ideas and thoughts. Really try
Mhm.
not to lecture. I know it's so hard for us to not
It's
lecture.
so important. Yes, to
Yes, yes.
listen.
To
Yes.
listen. Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm. It's so hard.
I know. I have to like pinch myself to be like, be
Same,
quiet, Alicia, be quiet.
same. I'm like, "Stop talking,
um,
just listen right now." Yeah.
yes, exactly. And the other thing is like I talk to my husband a lot about his role in instilling confidence and self-worth in her, especially since him and I were high school sweethearts. So she always brings that up in my face, like, well, you dated dad, da, 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 right? So I make sure that my husband, yeah, I know. So I make sure that my husband is also talking to her about like his mistakes,
Yeah.
and what he thinks of her. And so he does a really good job at that because I think the male's perspective is also super important.
Mhm.
So we both try to come at it together, but it's not easy. It's
Yeah,
not
I
easy.
know. No, you're doing great. I think that's the thing, is like any step forward is a step forward,
Yes.
and we're all going to make mistakes at some time, and with our girls, and it's okay. Like with our kids in general and as people, and it's okay. We just try again. The next time we try it a different way,
Exactly.
or we pause and listen more. Has there been a case with your daughter where you have noticed anything in friendships that have been like a conversation that you've talked with her about, with self-worth and self-advocacy and things like that? Like, has that come up with her very much in these high school
Yeah.
years? And yeah.
It definitely has. It definitely has. And it just makes me sad, right? Because I'm like, gosh, like we women need to support ourselves. But if like these
Mhm.
young girls already are like having this like, bickering or jealousy, whatever it
Mhm.
is, and I'm like,
Mhm.
a lot of that is learned, unfortunately, right? Or not being told or talked about it. So yeah, there was like a couple situations in middle school, even elementary school, honestly, where like she knew that her friend was not a good friend and like would talk behind her
Mhm.
back. And like if like that friend's friends were absent, she would come and hang out with my daughter, right? Just
Yeah.
like things like that. And so, luckily my daughter would tell me about it, or I would get like a hint that she's a little upset about something. So I would kind of like poke a little bit, be like, hey, what's going on with so and so? Or to try to like get a little bit out of her.
Yeah.
And we would talk and I would just be like, "Well, what is your real feelings? Like, what do you feel about her?" And she's
Mhm.
like, "Well, I think it feels like she's kind of like using me." And I'm like, "Oh my God." And I'm like, I want to go beat this girl up, but just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know.
But,
We
you
all
know,
wanna rescue them. Mhm.
yes. So, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, that's not a good feeling. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what do you think you can do though? Like, is this something you want to continue to feel? Or like, do you
Mhm.
actually feel like you want to try to make a change now? And that's the biggest step. Like what you had said is like them getting enough courage and confidence to say something to change it. That's
Yes.
like the biggest, like, right flip that you want to try to get in your child's brain. Um,
Mhm.
and it's not easy, but it's more of like, okay, that's where this role playing comes about. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, what if the next time this comes up again? Like, I'm going to be
Yeah.
her and you be you. And then I'm going
Yeah.
to say to you, like, oh, can I hang out with you today at lunch? My friends are not here. Like, what would you say? And so that's where I literally try to do so much of like the back and forth and like, okay, well, she may say this or you may feel this. So then
Yeah.
maybe they're a little prepared of the
Yeah.
feelings and like the comebacks that the kid may
Mhm.
have.
Mhm.
And I feel like that is honestly like so crucial of like having them say it out loud. So then it's not the first time
Mhm.
that they're saying it, right? It's not a new feeling or a new
Yes.
uncomfortableness. Same thing how we rehearse for right shows or whatever it may
Yeah.
be, like saying
Yeah.
it out loud a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
it's also knowing that they don't have to, like, even if a girl says something mean, that they don't have to have like a burn to come back to. Like, they can say
Yes.
something that's assertive, but and true, but also not mean. Like, they can say
Right.
something like,
Yeah.
I feel like you are using me when your friends
hmm
aren't around. That's a
Yeah.
true statement. Like, that
Very true
is how
statement.
she feels. And it's assertive. Like, it's not like you're a terrible person and,
Yes.
you're always mean to me, whatever. And I mean, yes, everybody has those moments where you say something that
Of course.
just kind of comes out. But if we teach our girls to say exactly what you're saying, like role play some scenarios, and
hmm
especially you being the bully, or the not the
Yes.
bully necessarily, but like the
Yes.
mean
Yeah. Yeah.
girl, you being
hmm
her, they love to role play. And I know
Yes.
that it may seem like it's only a younger kid thing to do, but they actually like to do it as they get older because, like you said, if they're saying it out loud, it's different to rehearse it in your head than it is to say it out loud.
Exactly.
And then they
hmm
can hear their own voice saying it, and they can practice the tone in which they want to say
Yes,
it.
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And we do that quite often and still to this day, with her being a freshman now and just more new stuff that is coming to light,
Yeah.
right, that we have to kind of deal with.
Mhm.
But I talk to her a lot. I'm like, well, like, she now in high school, right? She sees boys that are a little bit more players and right, they talk to different girls. And I'm like, what are your
Uh-huh.
thoughts on that? Like how does
Yeah.
that make you feel, especially if it's one of her girlfriends where it's happening to?
Yeah.
And like the girl keeps going back to the boy though, right? So instead of me
Mhm.
being like, why is she right?
I know.
I'm like, Alicia, don't say this. Let's talk about this instead. I'm like, what do you think about that?
Yeah. And what does she normally say?
She's like, he's using her, but like she just likes him so much that she can't stop. And I'm like, do you think that's okay? you know?
Mhm.
And she's like, well, no. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, but why do you think she does that? And she's like, well, she just doesn't
Mhm.
have confidence or like, she just wants to be with someone. Like she doesn't want to be alone. And then that's where I'm like, okay, like that. I'm glad that she's recognizing that it's their
Yeah.
feelings of like low confidence or insecurity, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'm always like, well, do you talk to them? Do you tell them about them? Talk to your friends? And then that's where it's like, well,
Yeah.
no, because back to what you said, Melissa, right? Of like they don't want to hurt their
Yeah.
friends' feelings. And I'm just like,
I
it's
know.
a
And you're like,
struggle.
well, here's what you could say. Like,
Yes.
you could
In a
say,
nice way. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
in a nice way, you could say, I've noticed, or
Exactly.
you could say, like, I feel really sad for you when
hmm
he blank, blank,
When he
blank,
does this.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I've also heard about like girls saying, even advocating for like partners in school. So when
hmm
they have to partner up and find a partner, that's like the worst situation you
hmm
could put a middle school or a high school kid in, like
Yes.
find a partner. Everyone's going to cling to their own friends. And then if you don't have friends in that class, is like, how do
Right.
you like advocate for yourself and like notice the other kids? And, you know, I hear this too about like, well, I don't have any friends in that class, or I only talk to her in that
Yeah.
class because there's no one else. And it's not that I expect us to be great friends, but she's the one that is closest to someone I would hang out with. And yeah, that's really
Hmm.
hard. Hmm.
It is. And I think like a lot of those go back to them being comfortable being by themselves and not
Yeah.
occupied, right?
Hmm.
Because they're so used to their phone always as their
Yep.
default. And it's like, how are they okay just being themselves and comfortable in themselves just
Yes.
sitting there? And even for us, it's
Yeah.
hard, right? Like you're in the
Yeah.
grocery store line, you like automatically pick up your phone, whatever it is, right? We automatically pick up
Yeah.
our phone.
It's such a
So it's
habit.
things like, yes, exactly. And theirs is even worse because they've grown up with cell phones and things like that. So
Hmm.
it all goes back to like, are we giving them enough space? Are we talking to them? Are we allowing them to be uncomfortable and know that
Hmm.
it's okay and like to be at peace with
Hmm.
themselves? Like it's all goes back to those type of points.
And
Yeah.
how are you navigating social media with a teenage girl?
Yeah, it's a struggle. I limit her time. That's number one
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
they get just so addicted to it. So like I have
Yeah.
certain time frames, just availability on her phone. I have parental controls as well. She
Hmm.
only has Instagram. She doesn't have TikTok or Snapchat right now. But it's something that's constantly brought up from her. Like, all my friends have this.
Yeah.
All of them. But she knows that I actively monitor it. So I have a parental account where I see everything. I don't see her messages, but I could log in if I want
Yeah.
to. So I just make sure that she knows that.
Hmm.
But we have high level rules, right? Of like, if you're not allowed to text this boy on your cell phone, you're not allowed to do it on Instagram either, right? So we have kind of
Hmm.
these high level rules just so she's clear. But I do talk to her a lot about that. Like, hey, this trend just popped up on my phone, or whatever it is. And I'm like, did you get this?
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on that? Or I'm like, what is the funniest video you're looking at right now? Because again, I'm
Yeah.
trying to like immerse myself into her world.
Yeah.
And also show her things that I'm seeing in my like algorithm that I'm seeing, bad stuff
Yeah.
and good stuff, because you have to
Yes.
talk about both. And I
Hmm.
tell her, I'm like, well, what's the bad thing that you've seen recently? And try to get her to
Hmm.
like share that with me as well. Um,
Mm.
because they're gonna have access to it, and it is a part of this world, so it's like you can't just ignore it and not talk about it.
Mhm,
So those are the big ways that I try to navigate it. But
mhm,
it's crazy the stuff that they see and access on it, even with all that. So I just keep telling her,
mhm,
I'm like, you're gonna see this, we're gonna see this. But this is reality or whatever it may be. And that's why
mhm.
how I try to go about it, just more honest and open.
Yeah. And I think too, like teaching girls, like body image wise, like does she
Yes.
talk about seeing body things, or like do you talk about how an account might make her feel about her comparison, or or like I think about, I did an episode a few weeks ago about FOMO, and just
Hmm.
the fear of
Yeah.
missing out, of like everyone looks like they're having a party all the time, or
Yes.
everybody looks
Yes.
like they're doing a modeling shoot all the time. Like that's what I notice with like my nieces and the girls that I know through Girls Positivity Club,
Yes.
who I've known through the years. And it's like, you know, they want their feed to look a certain way, but a certain
Yes.
aesthetic, even though that's not the norm anymore. Like in theory, it's not supposed to be, but does she talk at all about like body confidence or body positivity or any of those things?
Yeah, she does. She does a lot. Um, I will say we were very fortunate in her middle school. One of
Mhm.
the teachers there did this really cool thing with the girls. Like she took a couple of them to the side, and one girl was pretty large for her size. And
Mhm.
she actually stood up in front of the class and told the girls that, like, she's tried everything she can do to lose weight and that it's so saddening to her when people make fun of her and talk to her about it. And she was tearing up.
Oh,
And other girls talked about other things that they're embarrassed about or
yeah.
feel ashamed about.
Hmm.
And like my daughter, she was like, she told me, she was like, I was tearing up in the class too. Like I felt so bad
Hmm.
and so sad about this. And so we talk about that, like we reference that all the time. And that was back in sixth grade, but
Yeah.
that made an impact. And I'm like, gosh, that's just
Hmm.
such a great idea for like other teachers to do that, like to pull the
Yeah.
girls aside and do that.
Hmm.
So we've talked about body image for a while because my
Hmm.
daughter is tall. She's like one of the
Hmm.
tallest ones.
Yeah.
And she like cannot stand. Even still, even though I
That's the
tell her
same.
like, hey, when you get older, you're gonna, because I'm tall too. I'm like,
Oh,
it's gonna be good, but
legs for days. Yeah.
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 Um,
Yeah.
so we've talked about it so much of like, this is you, and like you are okay with yourself because like you're beautiful in it and of yourself. And like
Mhm.
I want her to like, just, and I tell her this all the time. I'm like, you're gonna compare yourself to so many women, but those women also feel a certain way. And I'm like,
Yes.
that girl that's short, she hates being short and she wishes she could be tall, right? So it's like
Yes.
all of us want something else that we cannot have, and we all feel the same type of way of comparing, etc.
Mhm.
And I'm like, but it's when it makes you feel bad about yourself and uncomfortable about
Mhm.
yourself, like that's when you need to check a little bit of like, wait, why am I feeling this way? Like, do I actually love myself? Like, am I happy with myself? Like, what does self-love mean? And how can I focus more on that? And that's what I try to talk so much to her about. Like, even just having curly hair and all the issues with that,
Mhm.
and like
Yeah.
how much more difficult it is to be a woman with curly hair versus straight hair. Like even things like
Yeah.
that, where
Yeah.
I just try to have a real conversation with her of like, you're comparing you comparing yourself is just making yourself feel worse. I'm like, you're
Mm.
actually choosing to make yourself feel worse because you're comparing yourself to someone else. And I'm like,
Right.
that's a choice that you're making. And I want you to be aware that you're making that choice. Like, do you want to make that choice? And that's the way I kind of
Mhm.
put it back to her, that it's actually her choice to do that. Um,
Yeah.
does that make sense? Kind of what I'm
I
saying?
love that.
Yeah.
Mhm. And how do you model self-love to her? Like, or like, how do you do things with her that are like, what's something you love about yourself today? Or
Hmm.
do you model for her like positive self-talk about
Yes.
your own body or your own, just your qualities that you're like, yes, I know I'm not perfect, but, you
Yes.
know, I do
I
love this
do.
about myself. Yeah,
Yes, I do. And of course, I'm guilty of saying stuff like we all are, right?
of
Like, oh,
course.
well,
Yeah. I
but
feel
what I
bloated today. Yeah, whatever it
exactly,
is. Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we all
Uh-huh.
can't help that. But I
Yeah.
really do and I tell her my journey, like back when I was growing up, we would all straighten our hair. Like most black women
Mhm,
would straighten their hair.
mhm,
And I
mhm.
would tell her it's just because it wasn't normal and this is like a lot, right? Back in the day. And I'm like, but learning to like love it and appreciate it and know that that's what makes you unique, like that's what
Yeah,
makes me feel like cool. Like now I love having my hair curly and out.
yeah.
And I'm like, and I love that I'm confident in that myself, and I'm like, and this is
Mhm.
why, right? This is what I do to make myself love it and really enjoy it and expose. So like I talk a lot about that of like my journey
Mhm.
also, and say positive things. For instance, like I still get acne and pimples, right? So I tell
Yeah,
her, I'm like, look, I am almost 40 and I still
yeah,
have this. And I'm like, but, it's
yeah.
a part of me. There's not many things I can do. So I just try to be like, you know what? This is just what it is. This is me. Yeah, this is frustrating. I have a pimple, right, whatever it is. And I'm like, but you know
Mhm.
what? There's so many other amazing things about me. And that is just one small thing. And I'm like, and plus I notice it more than other people do. We all know
Exactly.
that. So it's things
Yes.
like that, right? Like I let her know that I have these insecurities, but not really. But you know what I mean? Like these things
Yeah.
that make me feel uncomfortable, just so she sees that even me as a almost 40-year-old, like who is confident in myself,
Mhm,
that I still have these feelings and that it's okay. But I focus
mhm.
on the good stuff. I focus on the
Yeah,
positive.
I love that. And do you hear her saying positive things about herself?
Yes. Yeah. I do. I do. Like she'll be like, "Oh, I look so cute today," or whatever. Like if she's dressing up, or if her hair is a
Yeah,
certain way,
yeah,
or whatever it may be. If she took a picture, so
yeah.
yes, I definitely do, which I love. Which I love. Or if she does great at soccer practice, she'll come in and say positive things. Also, things she can work on, which I appreciate. But she
Yeah.
definitely does. She definitely talks herself up, which I like. I like a lot because I did
Mhm.
not do that when I was young, so I love that.
Oh, yeah, same. And I think, it's so important too to like praise their effort and praise the
Yes.
progress too, because I think sometimes, like, especially high achieving girls who are good at a lot of things, or they've found their thing that they're really good at, or they are
Yeah.
really good at school or whatever it is, it's like also okay, like exactly what you're saying,
Yes.
that if you don't get 100%, or if you don't make
Yes.
every goal, or you don't, you know, make the tryout of whatever it would be,
Yes.
you showed up, and that's really good. Like,
Mhm.
I talked to a girl yesterday who she's in 3rd grade, and she had shared a few weeks prior, well, probably a couple months, that she was nervous about a basketball tryout. And same thing, we're like perfectly normal to feel mixed feelings.
Yes.
And, whenever you do something new or you are in a new environment, like it's very normal. And I checked in with her yesterday. I'm like, so how has it been going? Like how, I know you shared that. And she's like, oh, it's great. We're in the finals this weekend. And I was like,
I love
oh,
it.
good. Like, I'm glad that you worked through it. I'm like, how does it feel? Her dad was late picking her up. So I always take advantage of that. Of like,
Yeah, for sure. I
I'm
love
going to
that.
have a one-on-one conversation with her. And I was like, so how's it felt? And she's like, yeah, I mean, it hasn't been perfect, but we've come a long way. And I mean, we're in the
Yeah,
finals, so I'm happy about that. And I was like, good for you, Ari. Like
I
that's
love
such
it.
a good thing that she noticed that. So I love that your daughter's doing that too.
Yeah, and like that example was so awesome. I love that because I do also reflect back on those situations. I'm like, you remember when you were so stressed about this and you thought this was the
Mhm,
end of the world? I'm like, tell me
mhm.
how you worked through that and tell me
Yeah,
what ended up happening. Because
yeah,
right, every situation is such a big deal, and it's like, oh my
it is.
gosh, it's the end of the
Yeah.
world. So you like get them to remember, like, hey, remember we did this 2 weeks ago? Remember we did this a
Mhm,
year ago? Whatever it is,
mhm.
I use that quite often, and that works a little. And she's like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all need that reminder, right? Of like
Yes,
how
all
far
of
we've
us.
come. Yeah,
Yes.
because we're in the moment and you're like, well, like you writing a book is a big deal to write a book,
Hmm.
and to publish a book and to talk about it and do all these interviews about it and to, help people and even talk about the topics you do on your social media, which everyone should follow. Um, but like it yeah, be proud of yourself, for
Yes.
doing all of
Yes.
these things because
Hmm.
we can't cheer each other on enough as women, as girls.
100%.
So,
I agree. Yes.
can you tell everyone where they can find your book and how they can follow you and find out more about what you do and talk to their girls about these hard conversations and not be afraid of it?
Yes, definitely. So you can go to my website, aliciacrespin.com. You can get my book there, or you can also buy it on Amazon, The Tea, The Talk by Alicia Crespin. I'm on Instagram or TikTok. So it's Spill the Tea with Alicia. So both same handle on both. So you can definitely check it out there. And I will say, you're going to be afraid to have these talks. That's totally normal to be afraid.
Yeah.
It's just more of like once you start that first initial one, like you do realize how much easier it is and the benefits of it and just like the closeness that it brings with your daughter. And I think that's what we all really want, right? Like
Mhm.
not surface level. Like we want to go deeper. And I just feel like we can do so much if we just talk about what makes us most uncomfortable. Like, and that's where I always start. Like, what makes you uncomfortable? Then say that to your daughter. To start there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. I love everything that you're doing and all the positive impact you're making on girls' lives. And thank you so much for being here on Raising Confident Girls.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing. Please continue it. Like together, man, we can be game changers. Like we can change it. I love it.
Exactly. And now they're going to have their lives changed by picking up your book and knowing how to have those hard conversations and following you and learning from you too. So I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining another empowering episode of the Raising Confident Girls podcast. Share today's insights with caregivers and friends, building beautiful relationships with strong girls. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're not just a podcast, we're a community. Follow Girls Positivity Club on social media for more empowering content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. This podcast empowers you, supporting incredible girls. Let's create strong, beautiful relationships with the girls in our lives. I appreciate you listening today. Stay confident, stay connected. Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You've got this.